All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining our January onX Hunt 101 Masterclass. We're going to give it just a couple of minutes to let everybody get situated, get logged in and everything. While we're waiting, just a couple of housekeeping items. Your audio and video are turned off, so don't worry if you've got noise in the background, kids or dogs or anything like that. We can't see you. We can't hear you. If you do have any questions, please open up the Q&A feature along the bottom of your screen. We have a member of our customer support team kind of in the background answering questions in there. That's the place to drop questions. The chat is just a little bit harder for us to keep track of and answer questions there. Chat's great for just chiming in, letting us know where you're viewing from and who you are. And this class is being recorded. So if you have to leave early, if you want to go back and watch something, if you want to send it to a buddy who needs to learn how to use their onX Hunt app a little bit better, any of that, we're going to send you an email link tomorrow with this recording. It'll also be up on the onX Hunt YouTube channel. You can find it there as well. And with that, I guess introductions are in order. My name's Jack. I work here at the onX Hunt, work at onX on the marketing team, I should say. I've been here 5.5 years or so. Started in customer support, which is where my co-host Connor currently works.
Yeah, I'm Connor. I've been on the customer experience team for coming on 2 years. If you ever email in, you're likely to get me or one of the other agents we've got.
And that reminds me of something I forgot to mention. If you do have questions pertaining to like your account specifically, by that I mean things like needing help resetting a password, things like changing your email address, changing your credit card, checking out on your billing. Our automatic lights just turned off in the office here. That was a little early in the class. Connor will get those back on for us. Anyway, if you have questions on your account, on your password, email address, things like that, we don't have the ability to really look those up right now. We just don't have the bandwidth to go in and check on all that. Send us an email to help@onxmaps.com. That's our customer support email. We answer all emails within 1 business day. So if you email us tonight with a question, you can expect a response tomorrow. And with that, we'll kick it on over to our agenda for the day. Here's what we're going to cover. We don't have the time to go into every single aspect of the app. This is a 101. The goal of this class is to take you from, a lot of people in the pre-registration question said, hey, I'm brand new to this. Just got it for Christmas, just want to learn. The goal is to have you walk away from this class with the ability to, find your location on the map, turn on the compass, utilize map layers, save offline maps, mark waypoints, do a few other things, change your base maps, perform a search, basic things like that. So that's the goal of this class. You can see the topics we're going to cover. At the end, we'll try to save as much time as possible for questions and answers. We'll try to answer as many of those as we have time for. We're also giving away some onX Hunt hats. We'll post the giveaway link in the chat towards the end of the class, so make sure you stick around and get entered for that. And with that, let's get into our different membership options. So Connor's going to run us through what the different paid memberships are, what those look like, and what you get with those.
Yeah. So with onX Hunt, there's going to be really 4 different levels you could be at. The first one not being a paid membership, which is just a basic user. That's just access to the satellite imagery and the topographic map. I won't have a lot of ground on what we're covering tonight because that's going to be mostly about those paid memberships. And those 3 are your premium 1 state, premium 2 state, and then the elite membership. So premium 1 state, exactly like it sounds. You're going to get access to 1 state's layers and data. That's going to include any of like the hunting related layers, the private lands, government lands, all your hunting unit boundaries and everything like that. Then that one will be $30 per year. Your premium 2 state is just like the initial one, except you're able to have 2 states selected. So if you hunt out of state and go out west every year, but you have your home state, you still want to have that info in, you can have access to both of those at the same time, be able to bounce between them and have just that information. And that's going to be $45 per year. The top level is our elite. That's going to be $100 per year. That gets you access to all 50 states data, Canada, and it's everything that we have for data wise. You can switch states on and off as needed. So if you're traveling, you can just jump to whichever one that you're headed to. With that, there's going to be some additional benefits that we'll end up covering later. some different imagery options. And then we also have elite benefits for those customers. And that's going to be discounts with a lot of our industry partners like Vortex, Federal, I think Lacrosse is on there. And that'll also get you access to Top Rut, Hunt Reminder, and I'm missing
Hunt and
one.
Fool.
Hunt and Fool.
Yeah, so we do have, it's kind of a mix in those elite benefits of discounts on hard goods and free or discounted services like Hunt and Fool. It's application season right now. We do a bunch of classes, master classes with the folks from Hunt and Fool. So if you are interested in applying for any of the big game draws in the Western states, we did one last week on the Wyoming elk changes. We're doing a bunch more this year. I think we have 6 or 7 more coming up with them throughout the spring and early summer. We also have learning courses on bird dog training, elk hunting, whitetail hunting, turkey hunting, just about everything. It seems like we're coming out with a shed hunting one here within the next few weeks, I believe, before shed season really kicks off. So a lot of cool stuff in there. So check it out.
One thing with those elite benefits, even if you aren't an elite member, you can still go and look and see what all we've got there. If it's brands you're looking for, you can just check them out, see if it is something you're interested in upgrading to if you're at one of those 2 lower levels.
Awesome. Well, let's get into the app. That's what we're all here for. I'm going to share my screen on my tablet here. So give us a second or two for that to pull up. Get over there. So here is the onX Hunt app. Actually, here we go. There's always a little bit of a lag there. So when you download the onX Hunt app onto your Android or your iOS device, whether it's a phone or a tablet, it's going to bring up a map that looks somewhat like this. You can see I've got a map. If I zoom out, we're here in Western Montana in Missoula, and I've got a blue dot with a white circle around it in the center. That's showing my location. If you're looking at a map, maybe something like this, where there is no blue dot, you're not able to see your location, to pan the map to your spot is in the lower right-hand corner. There's a button there that looks kind of like a crosshair. I've heard it described as a wagon wheel. Tap that button. When I tap it right now, you can see it turns blue, and the map is going to pan back to my location. If you tap that button and it gives you some sort of message like location services, permissions needed, or location services disabled, something along those lines, that just means you haven't given onX permission to access your device's location. You just need to enable that in your settings, and then that'll let the map show your location. I should say, let the app show your location on the map. So here we are. I can zoom in on myself. You can see we're at the office there. If I tap that location button one more time, you can see it's blue right now. If I tap it again, it turns into kind of like a triangle or an arrow. This is how you can have your heading be up on the map. We get that question quite a bit of, hey, it's always north up. What about when I'm traveling south or whatever? So what you do, if I'll hold my tablet up so you can see here, you can see I'm spinning my tablet around and the map on the screen is rotating. So whatever direction your device is facing, the top of the device, that's what's going to be up on that map. So super useful when you're hiking on a trail. If you're, don't do it while you're driving in your car, but if you're a passenger in a car or on a side-by-side or boat or something like that, that way you can tell, I always use the example of I'm driving down the road and I see some antelope out the right side and I need to know real quick, hey, is that public or is that private? Instead of having to do those mental gymnastics of figuring, well, I'm traveling south, so then that's opposite. And if you just have it in this heads up mode, you can see on the right, oh, yep, that's private, that's public, whatever. Also nice for if you're traveling down a Forest Service road and you need to make sure you're taking the right fork, have that so you can make sure you're going left, going right, whatever. What was that Yogi Berra? When you come to a fork in the road, take it. Don't know that one, huh?
No, I don't,
All right.
unfortunately.
Anyway, so tapping the button one more time brings you back to north being up on the map. So that's how you can find your location, and you can turn on kind of the heads up mode is what we kind of call it internally here. Now you'll notice when I go into this mode, into this compass mode or heads up mode, in the lower right-hand corner, a third button has appeared here and it looks like a compass with the needle there. If I turn that on, it goes into kind of our more advanced compass mode, where I have this kind of gridded line coming out from my location, as well as a compass heading at the top. So if you want to be able to take, it's not exactly the same as a true like orienteering compass, but if you want to take a bearing and have kind of an idea of what degree, from north, what declination you're heading, you can do that. If I now tap the fourth button that has shown up in the lower right-hand corner, you see this looks like a rangefinder. So if I tap that, this I think is the true power of the compass mode, and this one's super exciting. So this kind of turns your app into a quasi rangefinder. And what's cool here is you can see the lower half of my line now is red or orange, and to the left I've got a waypoint. And if I just tap on that line, tap on the center, I'm just dragging my finger up. I can extend that, I can pull it back down. If I go all the way up to the top, it's going to zoom me out. You can go out for miles and miles and miles if you want. I'm just going to bring it back down here. So what's cool here is, let's say I'm out in the mountains and I range find a deer, and let's say I'm archery hunting, the deer's 500 yards away. Obviously, I got to put a stock on this deer. I can run this out to 500 yards. I'm going to point my phone out towards the deer, have it pointed at that direction. I'm going to run my compass here, run the rangefinder out to 500 yards. I tap that waypoint button. I'm going to hit done. Now I have a waypoint on my map where that deer is. Because when I'm putting on a stock, I'm very likely going to have to get out of sight of this deer. Let's say it's, high country mule deer, early season, it's bedded down. I'm going to put on a stock. I might have to take a pretty circuitous route to get there, but now I have a waypoint on my map. So I have a target. I know where to go so I can relocate this buck. Same thing after the shot. Let's say I'm rifle hunting, spring bear is exactly 3 months away. I'm not excited or anything, but let's say, oftentimes we're shooting cross canyon shots, things like that. In the spring, vegetation's growing. Things can be hard to tell, where you are once you get across that canyon or across the face of the mountain, whatever. I can do the same thing. I can put a range. Hopefully I ranged before I shot. I put the waypoint on that spot on my map. Now I have a spot to start blood tracking. I did it this year on a mule deer buck. I got out in eastern Montana. It wasn't a super far shot, but it was, some kind of not quite badlands country, but some coulees and some draws. And I would have been able to find it at some point, but it just made it much, much faster. I had a waypoint and took me right to where the blood trail was, and he went, 60 yards or something like that. So super handy to have. We are going to be making improvements to this. Can't say a whole lot right now, but there's some cool things to come with this compass mode and this rangefinder feature in here. So I'm just going to tap the exit button to get out of that. Tap my location button one more time to bring north up. Anything I've missed on compass mode, rangefinder, location?
No, I think you're pretty good there.
Awesome. So we're going to get into our map layers right now. And this is really kind of the meat and potatoes of the onX app. This is really why people buy the app for the most part, is our land ownership data and our other layers. So you can see right now when I tap on map layers, I have Canada, Minnesota, and Montana listed in there. If you have a premium 1-state membership, you'll probably just have 1 state listed there. If you have 2-state membership, you should just have 2 states listed there. If you have elite and you're not seeing a state that you want to see, here is how you turn on additional states. I'm just going to scroll down. You can see we have a bunch of other layer collections here. We'll get to those in a minute. But if I keep scrolling down, you can see a list of states here alphabetically. I have the 3 that I have turned on: Canada, Minnesota, Montana, and all the other ones are listed. If I want to turn on let's say Wyoming, let's say I finally want to put in those Wyoming points I've been buying the past few years and apply for an elk tag. I just tap on that slider button on the right side. Now I can see Wyoming is listed near the top with my other states, and I see it up there as well, right below Montana. So that's a question we often get is, hey, I bought the elite membership. Why don't I see all 50 states? We don't turn on all 50 right away for you. In fact, that's something we discourage. Having all 50 turned on at one time is a lot of data. And we can see some performance issues where it's just trying to load up so much data. Personally, I almost never have more than 2 on. Most of the time it's just 1 because I'm only concerned with hunting one state at a time. When I'm applying, in the spring, in the draws and stuff, I might have a couple turned on. But for the most part, it seems like if you have 5 or less, we don't see any issues with performance, excuse me. We get above 5, you might see some slowdowns. If you want to turn one off, I'm going to turn Minnesota off here. I just tap on that folder or that collection, and at the top, it says remove state in red. I'm going to tap on that, and it's gone away. The other way to turn it off is to go down to our list here, and I can turn off Canada just by tapping on that switch there. So getting into our layers, I'm going to go into Wyoming. You can see by default, when you turn a state on, you have 3 layers that are turned on: your private lands, your government lands, and your hunt areas. Your state, it might not be called hunt areas. It might be hunting districts or GMUs or something. Everybody calls it something a little bit different, but that's what that is. So if I just close this menu right now, I'm going to go down to Wyoming to show you what this looks like. So here's a zoomed out view of Wyoming. Most states are going to look similar to this. I've got green lines kind of all throughout the state. Those are your hunt areas or your hunting districts. There's a couple of states that don't have these. I think Illinois probably won't have them turned on by default. And I'm not sure about Indiana. I know those are kind of the 2 that don't have like big game units in the same way that other states do. But most states will have this. As I zoom in, I can see some colors starting to pop up. And as I zoom in even closer, I see orange lines with names in them. So those are your private parcels. The different colored areas on there are your government lands. And a good rule of thumb is if you don't know what something is on the map, just tap on it. So if you don't know what a certain color is, like what is this yellow parcel right here? I'm going to tap on it. That tells me it's BLM land. Okay. And the more you do this, it becomes second nature. Like I just know by looking at it, yellow is BLM, blue is state, green is Forest Service, purple is national park, pink is military installation. It's more of a browner color for tribal lands, like you see right here, Wind River Reservation. And the same goes for private lands. If I tap on a private parcel, that's going to pull up this white card at the bottom. The term we use for that is the query card, after you queried the map. So that is going to pull up the owner's name, their tax address, what county you're in, and how many acres that parcel is, as well as, in this case, what hunt unit we're in, and then some weather data. We'll get to weather specifically a little bit later on. So the information we have for private lands is the tax address. It's not necessarily the address for that parcel. So this is where they get their mail, to put it simply. Especially, you look at a rancher or a farmer who owns a whole bunch of land, they're getting their mail at their home address. So we don't show the address necessarily for this specific field or this pasture or something. We sometimes get that question for people wanting to plug that into, Google Maps or something like that for driving directions. That's the tax address, which is handy if you're trying to get, gain access to a parcel. You can send a letter to them. You can use the tax address and the ownership information to maybe try to track down a phone number. We don't include phone numbers in this data, kind of out of respect for landowners. You can imagine if you were, a rancher that frequently has elk on their land, how many phone calls you might be getting every September, October, November, and so on, or I would probably just take my phone off the hook or something like that. And, if everybody had that person's phone number, it's still kind of a level playing field where everybody's able to have that, it still makes it kind of difficult to gain access to an area or something like that. So that's a question we got in the registration questions, a little bit about phone numbers. We don't have them right now. In the future, maybe that'll change. We don't know, but for right now, no phone numbers in the private lands data. So that's your private lands, your government lands. If you're not seeing that on your map, if you're like, man, I have Wyoming, why aren't these showing up? Double check to make sure that these layers are turned on. Any of the layers on the app that can be turned on can be turned off. So we sometimes hear from folks like, hey, I'm not seeing the government lands, and they just have the layer turned off, or they maybe turned the state off and it's not turned on in their layers at all. So that's something to double check. Moving into the hunt areas, I picked Wyoming for a reason, because I would guess you guys have already gotten some emails this year since applications have opened up.
We have.
Wyoming's the #1 culprit for this, because Wyoming has different hunt areas for pretty much all of their different species, for their big game species. By default, your mule deer hunt areas are going to be selected. Most states, whether you're in the Northeast, the Midwest, whatever, deer is typically, if you have deer specific units, that's what we turn on by default. Or maybe you just have big game units. Maybe it's like Montana where it's deer and elk combined. We try to pick the animal that's kind of most commonly hunted. In most states, that's deer. If you're not looking to hunt deer in Wyoming, but you want to apply for that elk drop, you need to turn on the elk hunt areas sublayer. You can see, if you kind of pay close attention to the green lines on my map, when I switch it back to mule deer, they change quite a bit there. Now, if I go back to elk, so that's typically the email we receive from people is, hey, your guys' maps are wrong. They don't match the Wyoming Game and Fish one. I've never seen that actually be the case. It's always been just a different sublayer. So you can turn on antelope if you're applying for the antelope draw, black bear, bison, you name it. So double check that. Doesn't matter what your state in. I know, like my home state of Minnesota, where I grew up, they've got the deer permit areas, they've got turkey, they've got waterfowl zones, fur bear zones, things like that. So just double check, make sure that you have the appropriate sublayer selected. And you can only have one turned on at a time. It's another question we sometimes get. You can imagine if you turned on all of these at a time, there would be a jumble of green lines and it just would be difficult to tell exactly what was going on there. All right, so enough on the hunt areas. I'm going to close out of my Wyoming folder. Your state folder may look different. If I go into Montana, you see we've got some different programs in Montana, like the block management layer. That's one I always have turned on here in Montana. That's our walk-in program. That is private land that's open to typically walk-in hunting. Some of them do allow motorized access, but private land open to public hunting. A lot of states have this. I think more than half of the states in the union do at this point. North Dakota, it's called plots. Wyoming, it's access, yes. Kansas is walk-in hunter access. A bunch of different states have these programs. Not all, but more and more are adding them. It seems like every few years another one comes on board. So double check that one. Those are going to be on your map. Here, I'll just pull one up. Come back to Missoula. So here's a block management area. It's going to be a black border with red dots inside of it. And again, if you tap on it, all of these different programs have different rules and regulations you need to abide by. So for the Montana block management, here it tells me some of the information. For instance, this one closed yesterday when our archery whitetail river bottom season closed. No more hunting in that block management area. You can also tap on those links. Excuse me, I'm not going to do that right now, but where it says visit website, you can tap on that. That'll bring you right to the state website where it goes over the program and it will bring you the information for this specific block management area or a specific walk-in area, depending on your state, depending on how the government, how the Fish and Game has that laid out on their website there. So that's another thing. I kind of forgot to mention earlier in the query card, where possible, we try to put links to kind of the data source or the source of truth where we pull this information from. We'll link you back to Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks, where they have all that block management information. So double check that. It always behooves you to, to take a look and make sure you're abiding by the rules and regulations of those programs. All right, moving on from the state collections, if I pull this up, you can see we've got 5 other collections in there. Now, those are nationwide collections. So no matter what level of membership you have, if you have a paid membership, premium 1 state, premium 2 state, or elite, you have access to current conditions, land and access, roads, trails and rec, trees, crops and cover, and wildlife layers. So those are nationwide ones. We sometimes hear from folks, one of the common layers in there is the active wildfires layer. Not so much in January, but more so in, say, July. People say, hey man, I'm in Colorado. I don't see active wildfires under Colorado. It's a nationwide layer. That's why it's in a different folder. So that's going to be in your current conditions, for example. We're not going to go into all of these. There's a lot of, layers in here. Just want to make sure you're aware that those are options for you to go in and turn them on and off. It's just like you do with state layers. Tap the button. That's the wrong button there. That was for my tablet. And you can just turn them on and off like that. A lot of these layers I think of more as like scouting layers. For example, the historic wildfire layer. I typically don't have turned on when I'm hunting because it can obscure the map, but I might turn it on when I'm doing some e-scout.
And one good thing to mention too, with obscuring the map, those layers, they don't all function the exact same as like the private lands or the government lands, where you're still going to see the imagery underneath. Some of those do substantially change the map. If you're ever looking at your map and it doesn't look quite right, it's always good just to jump into those menus and check them out. Like that's a great example there, our precipitation radar. It substantially hides the imagery. It's difficult to see anything, but you jump in, start turning a couple of them off while you can still see the map. You'll usually find whichever one is causing that to happen.
The other big one is the forest visitor maps.
Yep, hear about that one all the time, especially in the West. It's old school, like 2D scanned in maps. They hide our imagery completely. If you're on the border of it, you'll see like some areas have satellite imagery and some look like paper. It's always that layer that's turned on when that's happening.
I can't find a border of it.
Ooh, out here, it's gonna be tough too.
It's pretty much all over. So the point being there is, if you're not sure why your map looks the way it does, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a layer. Another thing you can often do, if you're not sure what a coloration is on the map, is you can tap on the map and that query card will show you information for different layers. Not all of them. Precipitation radar is one that doesn't show up in the query card. But I saw somebody who had the National Wild Turkey Federation layer on before. And if you tap on that, it'll tell you National Wild Turkey Federation, like turkey distribution map, something like that. So that's another trick. Something we hear from folks quite often is, hey, I don't know what this color means. Again, tap on the map, check your layers. That should set you right.
And we'll get into this more in a little bit, but you can turn layers on and off when you're offline as well. So if you're out on a hunt without cell service and you're using your offline maps, and you don't want the government lands, let's say you're like all on Forest Service land, you don't necessarily need to see it anymore. You can still go and switch those off even if you don't have service, and then be able to switch them back on once you need them.
Yep. Speaking of offline, that's a great segue. One of the things we hear from folks quite often is, I don't have cell service where I hunt. Can I still use the app? Yes, you absolutely can. It's going to function almost exactly like it does when you're online, with a few exceptions. So first, let's say we're planning a trip. I don't know, we're going up by Fort Peck here, let's say. Before I leave, I want to save a map of this area because I don't know if I'm going to have cell service there. And if I do, it might be a little bit spotty. In the lower left-hand corner, there's a button that says Offline Maps. I tap that button. It's going to pull up a menu that looks like this. You may not have all of these maps with the green circles next to them down below. Those are maps that I had previously saved. We'll talk about those in a bit. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tap this orange button that says New Map. And that is going to make my screen look a little bit different. I have this red box with a clear map inside of it. So that's going to be the boundary of my offline map. That's what I'm going to save for offline use. I can still, with one finger, move the map around. I can get it set just right. And then from there, if I go down to my map detail card here, you can see I can choose the map detail. Now, a low detail map is going to be your biggest. You see it gets to be almost 150 miles wide. Those measurements are going to be kind of, I just lost my train of thought. Those measurements are going to be specific, that's the word I was looking for, to your device's screen dimensions. So I'm on a pretty big iPad here. It might be a little bit different on yours. Nothing to worry about. We just try to customize it so that it fits the dimensions of your screen. This low detail map is going to be useful. I think of it mostly as a backup. So I will save pretty much the whole state of Montana in these low detail maps so that no matter where I go, I at least have something. It's going to save all the layers. So you're going to have your private property boundaries, your government lands, your roads and trails and all that information. It's just that the satellite imagery isn't going to be as detailed because it's not saved in as high of resolution. So that's what I use those for. I don't use that as my primary source of mapping when I'm out in the field. What I do use are the medium ones. So you can see it's quite a bit smaller, but it's still 30-ish by 40 miles, give or take. Your device might be a little bit smaller, might be a little bit bigger, but it's still quite a large area. Sometimes you can get darn near a whole hunting unit in one of these maps. And then your imagery is going to be much higher resolution than the low detail map is. If you want to go one step higher, you can go to high detail. You can see it's quite a bit smaller map. It's about a fourth of the size. So these are useful for areas where you're like, I know where I'm going. I'm going to be in this area. I'm not leaving it. I use this when I go back to Minnesota and hunt our family deer camp because we've had stands there. That's where our stands are going to be. I'm not likely to be driving around like I might do when I'm antelope hunting, in Wyoming or eastern Montana, where I might cover hundreds of miles a day looking for an antelope. That's when I use those high detail maps. So if you're a person who's like, man, I know where we're duck hunting, I know where we're deer hunting, this might be the map for you. For me, personally, I do the medium maps 90% of the time because it still is pretty good imagery detail. I've never felt like, man, I would have killed that buck if I'd had better imagery detail. It's never really been a handicap for me. The day might still come. We don't know. Who knows? After next season, I might be singing a different tune. But for right now, that's what I use, is those medium ones. And then what I do recommend is naming all of your maps, because once you have a bunch of them saved, when it just says map 11624, it doesn't really mean anything to me. I'm just going to name this one Fort Peck. So that's where we are. And then I'm going to hit the save button. And now you can see it down below there is downloading. It's going to take a few seconds, maybe a minute or so to download, as long as my Wi-Fi is good, which it is here. And once that's saved, then I'm good to go. Once I go out in the field, I'm going to have that map, and anywhere within those boundaries, I'm going to be able to see the imagery. I'm going to be able to still see my location. I'm going to be able to use the tracker and track myself. I can mark waypoints. I can see all of my layers. I shouldn't say all. There's a few layers like the precipitation radar. There's a couple of them that don't operate when offline.
Pretty much all of your current condition menu layers, don't expect those ones to work offline. Those are pulling data up to update them constantly.
Right. Any of those like precipitation radar that is pinging a data source is not going to work offline. As you might expect.
One quick thing to mention too, you had talked about antelope hunting. When I go out, we're often moving around by vehicle quite a bit, so we're covering a ton of ground. There's no limit to the number of offline maps you can save with a paid membership. It's just dependent on the storage on your phone. So if you need to save more than that one, you can just stack them next to each other or build out to cover the whole area. And then that way you're able to get as much offline as you need. Like that, give them a little bit of overlap. Save that next one, and now you have that medium resolution for a wider area.
Yeah, that's the nice part of those green lines on there. So you can really line them up. And I've heard somebody call it quilting together maps. We're creating a grid. If you look at my personal account, most of Western Montana is in those medium resolution maps, all gridded together. Takes me about 5-10 minutes maybe to save all those maps. So pretty slick there. And then once they're saved, they're there. You can see I've got, a bunch of different test ones saved here. One thing you might notice is that some of these maps that were previously saved have a message that says update available underneath them. What that means is something in the data has changed since that map was either saved or last updated. Most commonly, that's going to be parcel information, especially in a state like Montana that updates their parcels. Montana's got a great, data source and data system. They update it every week, every couple of weeks, I think it is. Then we update, we match that cadence. So all this update available means is something has changed there. You can still use the map when it says update available. It's still going to function for you, but something's out of date. So if you think about it, let's say you want to go out hunting, hiking, fishing, whatever this weekend, you've got a saved map for the area. All you have to do is tap that green circle with the check mark, and that's going to start updating it. Alternatively, if you want to do all of them, in the upper right-hand corner of this menu, so if I go to offline maps, go all the way to the right, tap on the ellipses there, I can update all at once. I'm not going to do that right now, but that would be the way to update all of them. Recommend you do it when you're on Wi-Fi. You can do it when you're on, your regular cell network. Just beware if you don't have unlimited data. We don't want anybody to have to pay an overage charge or anything. One thing you might notice is this map here looks a little bit different. You see it's got kind of a candy cane or barber pole stripe around it. What that is a map that I had previously saved that I then removed from this device. There's kind of two ways you could get into this state. If I had saved a map on my phone, you can be logged into multiple devices with the same account. You just use the same email address and password. So let's say I saved one on my phone and then pulled up onX on my tablet. My account knows that I saved a map, but that data doesn't automatically transfer to the second device, that map data. So then I have to go in, you can see it's my bottom one on the screen here. I don't know if that's cut off for you, but it doesn't have a green circle next to it. It's got kind of a black circle with a down arrow. All you do is tap that down arrow. That's going to start downloading for you. So that's one way you could get into that state. The other way is you can remove maps from your device just to save space. I just recently did this. Most of our hunting season's wrapped up in Montana. So I got rid of a lot of the maps that I'm not going to be using for the next 8 months, 9 months. So all you do is tap the ellipses to the right, hit remove from device. It's going to give you this warning. And then that's going to remove it from your device. I do that for, I saved a bunch for sharp-tailed grouse hunting last September in central Montana. I don't really hunt anything else in that area, at least not yet. So when I got done with that trip, I just removed all those just to save space on my device.
And one other extra thought with that, I often hear when people get new phones, that's the same as switching devices. Even though you logged back into your onX account on the new phone, you'll want to make sure you go in, click on all those down arrows to re-download those maps. So that way you don't go back out to the field the week after getting a new phone and those maps aren't ready for you.
Yep, that's a very good point. So double check, before you leave, double check that those are downloaded there still. And again, if it says update available and you're heading out the door, don't worry about it. Go hunt, enjoy yourself. When you get back, think about doing the update when you get a chance, but not super critical all the time to update those all the time. Just do it before you head out if you think of it.
Yeah, I usually do mine a couple times a season just to make sure I'm on top of it, but that's about it.
I'm the kind of guy who can't have like any notifications on his screen. So when it says update available, I probably update mine like 3 times a week because I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna do it. But I'm weird. So offline maps, I think we pretty much covered it there. Yeah, I think we're pretty good there.
We're good.
Let's move on to our map tools. So in the center of my device here, I have another button that says tools. Gonna tap on that. That's gonna bring up the toolbar. Now, there's really 4 or 5 different tools we're gonna touch on here. The most common is waypoints. That's what you're gonna be using. I shouldn't say for sure, but nine people out of 10 are gonna be using waypoints more than any of the other tools. So we'll start with that. There's a couple different ways you can mark a waypoint on the app. The first way is to just tap the button that says add waypoint. You can see, I should have chosen a different area so that it's more clear. I'm going to move to a spot where I have no waypoints and try that again. There we go. So now I've got a red X, middle of my map, and I've got my edit menu up here on the bottom. Just like with offline maps, name your waypoints. I had to go through, it's been a couple years now, but I used to just mark red X's all over the place without putting any other information. And then a year later, I have no idea what that was for. It was useless to me. So I went through and deleted all of them. I caught a couple of them from this past fall where I was bird hunting, where I just pulled out my phone and hit mark my location. We'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. It's probably where I flushed a bird or something like that, but I didn't put any other information. And now 3 months later, I don't know what that was for. So I just deleted them. So I'm just going to name this one test right now for the purposes of this class. Name it whatever you want, whatever makes sense to you. You know, big buck rub, parked the truck here, water, spring, whatever. And then I recommend changing the icon as well. We've got, I think it's like 90 icons that you can choose from. Everything from wolf, trail camera, hiker, cabin, elk shed, food source, you name it. I'm going to mark this one glassing area. I do that quite a bit especially when I'm e-scouting, when I'm looking for places I want to potentially glass. I'll use that one. And then you can change the color. And I use color for organization purposes. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Whatever makes sense to you is great. I do it by species, where my deer spots are all kind of the standard orange or reddish orange color. My turkey ones are this more turquoise color, waterfowl's green. My miscellaneous ones, just like parking spots or hazard in the road or something, white. Some people will do it by year, where they'll say, all right, 2024, they're all blue. And 2023 was all red. That's another way to do it. I use red for areas I want to check out. So I will do that for all my glassing spots that I find e-scouting. I make them all red because I haven't been there to verify it yet. Then when I go there and I verify it, if it's a bear glassing spot where I'm bear hunting, I make it that color. If it's elk, I make it that color. Some people will then, if it's no good, they'll go in and make it like black so that they know, hey, don't come back to this area. It's not worth it, whatever. So again, the way you organize it is really up to you. The only wrong way is to not do anything at all. Whatever makes sense for you, do that. Once you save a waypoint, you can also add a picture to it. So this is cool. You can either take a picture right kind of within the app, or you can take a previously saved one and put it in there. I do this for, I've used it for elk hunting, where I'll take a picture of a wallow so that I can kind of track year to year. Oh, on September 1st of 21, it was plumb full of water, and 22, it was dry or whatever. I also do it when I harvest an animal. I'll take a picture of, my grip and grin with my deer or whatever. It's kind of fun to go back and look at these later on. And then after photos is folders. You can add waypoints. We can add any markup to a folder. Again, this is really handy for organizational purposes. You can see if I just tap on folders there, I've got a few different ones I made. Test, December test, mule deer, elk. I'm just going to mark this one elk for right now. And then now that's in my elk folder. Couple reasons to use folders. I'm just going to save this for right now. If I go into my elk folder, you can see I have a bunch of them saved here. Handy for a couple of reasons. One, if I want to share multiple waypoints or markups with Connor, for example, let's say we're planning a trip. I've done a bunch of scouting and I said, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Here are the different spots I want to check out. I can pull up that folder like I have right here. Along the bottom of my screen, there's a share button. I can share that with him and text him or email him all of those waypoints. You can also do this individually with individual waypoints, but if you've got a dozen different ones you want to send, throw them all in a folder, hit that share button, and then that's going to send them all to him. So that's super handy.
One thing with that too, the same waypoint can be in multiple folders. So like for mine, I do it by year and species for folders, but then if I'm planning a trip with someone else, I'll have a folder just for that. That waypoint might be in both of them. Lets me have it all for my own organization and then easy to share as well.
Mm-hmm. The other cool thing with folders is you can hide an entire folder. So that's a question I remember seeing in the registration questions was, hey man, I got so many waypoints, it's cluttering up my map. How do I declutter them? Put as many markups as you can, put all of them into different folders, and then you can hide an entire folder's worth of markups at a time. You can turn them off and on. You see, I only have a handful here, but if you're looking at my map up top, you can see a few of those appear and disappear. So again, I do my folders typically by species. So I just went through and I turned on bear and turkey because those are the spring seasons that are coming up next. I turned off waterfowl and upland because that's what I was hunting most recently. I've got my elk turned off. I've got my deer turned off. I've got pronghorn turned off because I only hunt that every couple of years. I haven't had that tag in a while. So you can turn them all on and off. You're not deleting them. They're still there. That's something we sometimes hear from people too, is like, all my waypoints are gone. And then they had just forgotten that they hid them in a folder or something. But that's kind of the other benefit of folders there, is just the ability to quickly declutter your map and turn off the information you don't need and turn on the pertinent information that you do need. All right, we kind of took a detour in folders there. Let's get back into waypoints. I'm going to zoom in on the map here to show you the other way to mark a waypoint. I shouldn't say the other way. One of the other ways to mark a waypoint is to tap the button that says mark my location. I tap that button, you can see it's going to drop an X on my location. This is what I use when I'm out in the field most of the time. So I'm out hunting and I come across a buck rub, I might want to mark that. If I come across any sort of sign, I'm going to mark that. When I put a tree stand up, I'm going to stand right below it. I'm going to hit mark my location. I'm going to change that to the tree stand icon. I'm going to name it and put all the pertinent information. Some guys will even stand kind of on the trail walking in and take a picture of it because things might look different in the dark so that they kind of know what they're looking for if it's a real well hidden tree stand. And then again, that's super helpful. If I want to send Connor to that tree stand, boom, here's the waypoint. Here you go. We sometimes get people confused where they're like, man, every time it just puts the waypoint on my spot. I don't want it to be on my spot. Remember, there's two different ways to do this. Mark my location. That's going to put the waypoint on your spot. If you're trying to mark something else, you can either hit the add waypoint like we just did earlier, or what I do most of the time now, and I think what Connor does as well, I'm just going to get out of town here a little bit. Let's say I want to mark a spot somewhere on this road. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to get pretty close. What I'm going to do now is just put my finger on the map and hold it there. And after about a second, it's going to drop a waypoint where I had my finger. So that's probably the fastest way to do this. You don't have to touch a bunch of buttons. Just hold your finger down. It's going to put a waypoint there. Again, change the color, change the icon, change the name. I'm not going to right now, just for this class. And then there it is, saved there. Excuse me. Got like the hiccups right now.
And with that, oftentimes we hear from people that are just trying to query the map or like get that information to pop up about ownership, and they're creating a waypoint. A quick tap is going to query the information that's displayed. That long hold, I think it's 2 seconds, will open up that waypoint creation. If you don't want to create it though, you can just pull that menu down to close it, and that's going to delete that waypoint you were creating and you can move on.
Yep. I guess there's actually one other way to mark a waypoint. If I query the map, you can see I've got that green dot there where I tapped. I can then hit add waypoint. So that's another way to mark a waypoint there. I do that sometimes as well. Gonna delete that, get us back to town here. Other tools you might find useful. The line distance tool. lot of different applications for this. At its most basic, it lets you measure the distance between 2 points. So I just drew that line. It told me it was 828 yards. On your computer, if you log into the web map, which we'll do here in a little bit, you can do more of a free draw where you can, instead of just drawing straight lines, you can draw curves and whatever. People use that to trace a road to see how far a distance is or trace a route, things like that. But most people are probably doing this on their app. So you can use this to just mark point A to point B. How far away is this? I've heard of people using this to measure, the perimeter of their land to see how much fencing they need to order or something like that. So line distance tool there, I'm just going to save that. Once you save it, it's going to give you an elevation profile, which is pretty cool. So when you're out, say you're out in the mountains, you want to say, I want to go from here to there. If I just walked straight, what does that look like? And you can see the elevation up and down. And a lot of times you might say, I think we're going to walk around the ridge instead of all the way down and back up. Up to you. Back into tools, we've got our area shape. Okay, so this is going to be very similar to the line distance. What I'm doing here is I'm just moving the crosshairs on the map and I'm hitting this drop point button. And now I can draw a polygon. You can add as many different points as you want, have as many different sides. This is cool. It's going to give you the perimeter. It's also going to give you the acreage. So super helpful for planning food plots is kind of the classic example we give people. You can then go in, like any other markup, you can change the color of it. So let's say you are planning 3 different types of food plots. Say you're doing corn, I'm not a food plot guy, brassicas, and what else are we planting?
Oh, like winter wheat.
Winter wheat. Might want to make them all different colors so that you can see, all right, I got corn planted here, I got brassicas, I got winter wheat planted here. And then you can also, it's super helpful to be able to see the acreage to know how much seed do I need to order, how much fertilizer or herbicide might I need, things like that. And then you can really visualize, when you're looking at your property, where everything is and how it's all laid out. Same thing, I've heard of people using this for burns, for prescribed burns. We're kind of coming up on that season in a lot of areas. I know, especially I think in the South, they do a lot in like January, February, do those prescribed burns. So you can kind of draw out where those different burns are. And I saw an example of a guy, it was a YouTube video I was watching. He's like, we burn 1/3 of the property every year. It's like, so this year, this third gets burned, then this third, then this third. And it's all kind of haphazard, different parcels all over the place, like a patchwork. And then he was marking it on the app. And he said, all of my burns from this year are this color, and here's where they all are. Next year, we'll burn these. And the year after, we'll burn these. So pretty handy tool to have there. Again, with all of these markups, the more you put in, the more you're going to get out. If you use the app and you're never using any markups, there's still plenty of value here, but it becomes a much more powerful tool as you have, kind of that knowledge of years and years. If you're marking it up and you have all that information, whether it's waypoints, area shapes, what have you. So the more you put into it, the more useful it's going to be to you down the road. I'm just going to save this right now.
One thing with that too, I don't remember if we covered it, lines and area shapes. When you're in that menu creating them, if you scroll down, you're able to adjust the color of those. With the lines, you can adjust the style of the line. With the area shape, you can do both the area color and the perimeter line color. So you can change a lot of that just so they're all different and unique. Helps kind of with whatever your system is, keep them organized, easier to recognize and know what you're looking at.
Man, I made that darn near invisible.
That yellow is real light.
That yellow is light. And you can have a no fill. That's what that farthest right one is. Some people wanted no fill on their areas because they wanted to see the imagery. You can do that. That's going to make it hard for me to see. I'm going to go back to blue, red. And there we go. All right, markups. Anything we forgot on those?
Pretty much good there.
Awesome. Let's get into the tracker. That's another tool that I use quite often. Now, this is how you can, as the name says, track yourself as you're traveling. So it's not going to do us much good sitting in the office here, but when I hit that start button, the timer is going to start. If I were walking or driving right now, you would see my distance changing and my speed. So I do this There's a couple different ways I use this. First off is just kind of a safety thing. If you're hunting a new area, typically my order of operations is I park my truck, get all my gear on, I get ready to go. I'm gonna hit mark my location. I'm gonna put a waypoint for the truck. It's the first thing I do. Second thing I do is I'm gonna hit the tracker and start that when I start walking. That's gonna lay a breadcrumb trail everywhere that I walk, or you can do it while you're driving or something like that. I'm gonna stop this for right now because we're not really going anywhere, and just delete that. But that tracker is gonna track everywhere that you walk. It's gonna lay a breadcrumb trail. So you can use this to find your way back. You can use this when blood trailing to see where you've covered if you have to grid search. I do it even like if I know the animal's dead. I still like to run that tracker just to see exactly where the animal ran. Sometimes it's interesting to see, often they're going to take the path of least resistance to see where they went. And you can get like, because we're always like, oh man, he went 50 yards. It's like, well, did he? You can get basically an exact, number of how far that animal traveled. I'll use it when I'm bird hunting to make sure I covered, all the areas of this field that I wanted to cover, something like that.
Walking into tree stands, it's a really good use there. And nice thing with that too is once you're done, that's saved to your map if you want to save it. If I wanted to send him into a tree stand, I have that waypoint for the stand itself, but I can also give him the exact track in that I walked, load it onto his map so he can just follow it in, make sure you're not walking through bedding areas or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a great use for it. Growing up, we used to hang like flagging tape or put those little like reflective tacks in the trees. And we still do a lot of times, but we really don't need to. If we have our onX track marked, I can walk in and just follow my phone and get right to the tree stand. That's what I do most of the time now. If it's tree stand I haven't been to and just, don't know the route in. Super handy. The other thing is it can be a safety thing for, you can share that with somebody. I guess you might not be sharing the track, you might just be sharing a waypoint, but I've shared it when needing help recovering an animal. I said, hey, here's the track in, here's the waypoint where I parked, here's where I am, here's kind of the best track, the best path in to this area, things like that. So, and speaking of safety, when we're talking about sharing waypoints, you can share waypoints, tracks, other markups with people that don't have an active account. So a lot of times people will have, I've got the account and my spouse at home maybe doesn't. Maybe they're not a hunter. They don't really need their own membership, but they can still have the free version on their phone. And I could send a waypoint to them, say, hey, this is the area I'm going to be hunting. I expect to be home, or be back in cell coverage by 8 o'clock tonight. If you don't hear from me by 9, maybe something's up, maybe send for help or something like that. So just a nice way to have some peace of mind from folks back at home. They know where you're going. They know should something happen, should something unfortunate happen, they kind of know where to direct the search efforts if it should ever come to that. All right, so we covered tracker, we covered tools, we covered sharing. Let's talk about base maps right now. We're going to kind of shift gears here. So we have a few different options for viewing the map and what the map looks like besides your layers. I'm going to zoom in to a forested area here. And what you're seeing is satellite imagery, something we're all kind of used to, whether it be from Google Earth or any other kind of mapping app is going to have satellite imagery somewhat like this. In the lower right-hand corner above that location button is your your base map selector. If I tap that, you can see I have satellite imagery selected right now. If I want to see just a straight topographic map, I'm going to tap on topo. And now this is going to look kind of like the old paper maps we all used to use. You used to maybe go get from the Forest Service or BLM office or something like that. And it's going to give me the contour lines. I'm still able to see the trails. It's really nice for finding water sources. They really show up a little bit better on the topographic map. But this is handy for e-scouting, especially. I don't often use the topo map when I'm out in the field, but I use it for e-scouting. Say I'm looking for those south-facing slopes for a spring bear hunt. Let's say I'm looking for those north-facing benches for elk bedding in September. something like that. I can use the topo to easily find, like right here, there's a saddle in between two higher points. So that all you need to do is just tap which one you want. The one I personally use most of the time is the hybrid. That kind of gives you the best of both worlds. You've got the satellite imagery as well as the topographic lines. So you get kind of the whole picture there. So here I can see where it's more forested, where it's less forested, and I also get an idea of what that slope looks like. And you can do this whether you're online or offline. You can change in between them. You don't have to. I've gotten that question before of, hey, do I have to have my base map selected when I save my offline map? Doesn't matter. All three of them are going to save. So you're going to have all three of them when you go offline. Couple other options in here. These are for elite members. We have recent imagery. So if I turn this on and go into the Bitterroots here, you can see quite a bit of snow there. I'll show you the difference when I turn it off and on. And then if I close this menu out, you can see along the bottom of my screen, there's a date range there. This recent imagery is updated every 2 weeks, and you can go back in time. So I'm just going to go back. See, we've had snow up there for a little while. Get back to October, no snow. So the data, we just started this recent imagery feature, started in March or April of last year. So the data will go back that far, but every 2 weeks we update this and we'll have new information. So it's going to be super helpful if you want to look at, all right, year over year, what does this look like? If I want to look at, I'm most excited about spring bear hunting this season for being able to check snow levels. There's a couple spots where I want to hunt that are not near town here, and I don't want to burn 2-3 hours worth of gas to get up there and realize, shoot, there's too much snow, I got to turn around. I can pull up the recent imagery, and yeah, it's not 2 days picture, but it's within the last couple of weeks. And I can tell, hey, if I'm going to this area, recent imagery shows that it's pretty clear. We haven't had a major snowstorm in those 2 weeks. I'm probably going to drive up there and take a look at it.
And one thing to mention with this, and then the leaf off imagery we'll show in a moment, these are predominantly designed for your e-scouting. They don't work offline at the moment. So these will be while you're at home on service, or if you're on Wi-Fi, or if you have cell service where you're at. Once you go offline though, you won't be able to use those. You'll just have that base imagery that's saved.
And the other thing to note is this imagery is updated more often, but it's not as detailed as our regular base map imagery. That's kind of the trade-off there. You get it more frequent, but it's not as up to date. It's not meant to be your sole source of information when looking at the imagery, when looking at the terrain. It's just another piece of the puzzle to help you, check snow levels. You check, hey, if the leaves all fallen, what's the water level looking like? If I'm going duck hunting, or I'm checking, maybe flooding in an area, have the crops been taken out? When I'm going pheasant hunting in the Dakotas or something, what's that looking like? So a lot of different uses for it. Again, if you don't want to see it, you can always just turn it off and use that regular imagery. Connor mentioned it earlier. We also have leaf off imagery, and I think it's 13 or 15 states.
We're at 15.
We have 15 now, all east of the Mississippi, I believe.
Yep.
So if you turn on leaf off imagery in Montana, it's going to give you that info. No leaf off imagery available. But if I scroll over to Wisconsin, we do have leaf off imagery. So I'm going to get to a forested area. Get to an area with some deciduous trees. So there you can tell the big difference, right? Leaf off, leaf on, leaf off, leaf on. So this was a request we had from a lot of people saying, hey, I can't really see what the ground looks like. There's too many leaves in the way. So we're not able to get this for every state right now. We're kind of adding them as they become available to us. And we try to kind of pick the states that have the best imagery and that people have kind of requested the most. So if your state is not included in the leaf off yet, you stay tuned, bear with us. We're going to keep adding more states as that data becomes available and as we can acquire it, as long as it's up to our standards and the imagery is useful. But you can see pretty slick for being able to easily tell, what's evergreens and what's deciduous. right? And you can zoom in. Again, it's not quite as detailed of imagery in some areas, but still plenty useful for different applications for checking what the ground looks like without those leaves there. Again, that's only for elite members. You have to have that to access those two imagery options. All right. I said we were going to talk about web map. I'm going to stop sharing here. I'm going to pull up the web map so you guys can take a look at what that looks like. Give me a moment. I'm going to reshare my screen. So everything we were doing there was on a mobile device, was on an iPad. It's what you're going to have on your phone or tablet at home. You can also visit onxmaps.com and log in there and view the map on your computer screen. So I use this again. My computer's not out in the field with me, but I use this for most of my e-scouting. It's a bigger screen. It's just a little bit easier for me to move the map around and see a big area on the computer. Again, you just need to log in with the same email address and password that you used to set up your account. You'll be able to log in here. And these two devices will sync up. So any markups that I make, any waypoints that I save, for example, on my mobile device, when I log in on my computer, show up here, and vice versa. Any e-scouting I do, I talked about, e-scouting for glassing points. I can save them all on here. And then when I open the app up on my phone or tablet, they're going to show up there as well. So again, you get, your base maps here. One thing I did show on the tablet that I want to show here is the 3D map. So if I zoom in on some mountainous terrain here, I can click on 3D, and this is available on mobile. I'm just demoing it here. You can see now I've got 3D. I can move it up and down. I can still zoom in. I can rotate it. Super cool to get an idea of what that terrain looks like because topographic lines lie. We've all probably been there and been like, it doesn't look that steep. And then you go out there and you're like, it looks very steep, right? So this is a good, good way to really visualize what the terrain looks like before you go out there. So that's the 3D option there. I'm just going to go back to 2D. A couple other things we talked about earlier. I want to talk about weather conditions. So whether you're on mobile or on the web map here, you can get weather information for that location. What I just did was I tapped on the map. I got my query card here, got all that information we looked at before. Along the top, I'm going to go over to weather. And I'm going to click on that. You can see for this location, -2, 5-mile-an-hour northeast wind gives me the sunrise and sunset time. So that's probably my most used weather feature within the app. I do it on my phone all the time when I'm heading out hunting. Hey, what's legal shooting hours, right? In Montana, for most species, it's a half hour before sunrise to a half hour after sunset. I can tell, hey, it's 7:16 and 5:44. You can scroll down, you can get an extended forecast. Thankfully, we're warming up a little bit here. I don't think we've been above 0 for a few days.
No, it's been pretty cold.
You can scroll down, you can see kind of more of an hour by hour forecast. You can break it out by precipitation. Looks like we're getting some snow. That's good. We need some. You can get the moon phase. You can use this. I'm going to be using this here pretty soon because I'm going to go to September when I'm planning out my elk hunt this year. Because not that I'm the biggest believer in that, the rut's late because the moon's doing X, Y, Z. But I don't necessarily want to hunt when it's full moon and they've got that brightness to be able to rut all night long. I'd rather maybe hunt this time period where it's going to be darker at night and they might do more of their rutting activity during the daytime. Things like that. One more thing I wanted to show, and then we'll get to our Q&A and our giveaway, is the search. So you can search on mobile and on web map. Either way, it's going to function basically the same. Click on the search bar and you're going to be able to search by location or by private land. Yours might say landowner still. We recently made that change. But location, just what it sounds like. I can search for Missoula, Montana. Click on that button there, and it's gonna bring me to Missoula. Awesome. Actually, I think that brought me to the county. It did. I can go to Missoula, the city. I can search for Glacier National Park. Again, click on it. It's going to bring me up to Glacier National Park. You can search for national parks, state parks. You can search for cities, counties, mountain peaks, different locations. One question we often get is, can I search for coordinates? Yes, here's how you do it. You're going to want to do it in decimal. So if you have coordinates in UTM or degrees, minutes, and seconds or something else, convert that to decimal if you can. That's going to be the best way to search. There's all kinds of online converters. And then all you need to do is type in or copy and paste if you had it from another application or somebody texted you coordinates. But you're going to just type in the coordinate. Your first one has to be positive. If it's like -45, that's going to put you in the southern hemisphere. Your second one has to be negative. So I'm just going to go 100. If I were to put 45, 100 in there, it's going to bring me over to like Europe or Asia. It's got to be negative in the Western Hemisphere. I used to be a geography teacher. That's why I know this. I'm going to hit search. It's not wanting to work for me. I apologize. See, I was talking smart now. There we go. I can click on that and it's going to bring me to South Dakota, because I've done this before. And then if I want to, I can hit add waypoint. I did it before. I already had a waypoint there, but I'm going to add another one. And that's how you search for a coordinate and put a waypoint on that spot. There's not a way. Sometimes people be like, man, I just want to automatically put a waypoint there. We don't have a way for it to automatically do it. You've got to do it yourself. But that's how you search for coordinates and then mark a waypoint on that spot. The other thing you can search is you can do a private land search. My map. Let's get us back. I should have zoomed out farther. All right. Let's get back around Missoula. I'm going to search private land. And now, I mean, if I just search Johnson, pretty common last name, hit search, you see I got all kinds of results here. It's going to prioritize results closest to what the map is centered on. So if I was looking for somebody whose last name was Johnson in Maine, I should move the map to Maine. And the more exact you can be, if they're in Augusta, Maine, I'm going to zoom in on Augusta, Maine, so that I can prioritize those results. The more information you can give this, the better. I don't know, give me a first name. Michael Johnson, and hit search. See, now it's going to give me all the Michael Johnsons. If I know the middle name or a middle initial, type that in. The more specific you can be, the better. I don't know this person. I'm just going to click on it. Again, just like you did with the location for Glacier National Park, click on the name. That's going to pull up their parcel. I feel like I forgot something on the search.
I think you're pretty much good. With that, you can also filter. So if you know that let's say this owner has a ton of parcels in this area, but the one you're looking for is their house. It's pretty small. They live on like a 2-acre piece. You could filter down just to that way, kind of reduce your results a little bit. But that list below is going from wherever the center of your map you're looking at is out. So if you're in the general location, start at the top of that list and click through them. And that's going to work you further away from wherever you're already looking.
Yep. Awesome. Well, I think that's basically it for the presentation portion of this. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to ask Eli, who's been answering questions in the background, to post the giveaway link in the chat. So make sure you get entered there. Takes you a few seconds. We're giving away some hats. I'll email all the winners tomorrow and get your hat sent out. So don't shoot us an email asking if you won. We'll email all the winners out. Let me pull up some questions here. I own a crowded state. I would like to know how to set a buffer zone between my location and the nearest building. So this is a great opportunity to use the range radius tool on a waypoint. I'm gonna pull up my map here one more time. Show you what that looks like. So this is a situation where, let's say there's like setback rules or safety zones, depending what they call them in your state, where you can't discharge a bow or discharge a firearm within X amount of yards from a building. So we're gonna pretend this is a building here, and I'm gonna be hunting this general area, again, hypothetical here. And I can't shoot within 100 yards. So I'm gonna hit this radius button. I guess I should back up all the way. I'm gonna click on the waypoint, go into waypoint radius, and you can do this on mobile as well. Click on the waypoint, go into waypoint radius, and then I can set the distance. It could be 50 yards. It could be 500 yards. So you can use this for a couple different things. Some people will do it around their tree stands and they know, hey, my ethical distance is 50 yards with a bow. I'm going to set that to 50 yards. Then I can kind of see all the terrain that I can cover from this area. People like the example in the question, I need to know I'm so far away from a building. You can put that waypoint on the building, draw that radius around it, and make sure I got to stay out of that orange colored area there. While I'm here, one thing we didn't mention on waypoints earlier is this wind direction. This is getting a little bit beyond 101, but I think it's really cool, so I'll mention it real quick. If I have a waypoint, again, I'm going to click on it. I'm going to turn my radius off here. You have a wind direction widget here. If I click on that, I can do a couple of different things with my wind direction. I can have it show me the current wind, where it's just going to tell me is 1 mile an hour wind out of the east, or I can have it show me the optimal wind, where let's say I only want to hunt this out of a north wind. So now I can tell this is an okay wind. It's coming out of the east. Also handy to have the wind calendar, so that let's just pretend I put all my tree stands, I put the optimal wind on there. I can pull up my wind calendar. That's over here on my toolbar. And then I can see which ones have a good wind, which ones have a bad wind, which ones have an okay wind. And I can check it out, an extended forecast there to see what the wind's going to be doing at those different spots at different times.
And just to interrupt you,
Yeah.
it looks like Eli was having some trouble posting the giveaway link. Could
Okay.
you post that in the chat quick?
I sure can. I will get that here. Not sure why he wasn't able to do that, but I will post it. So people who say enter me for the drawing, I can't do that, but if you click the link, it's in there now. Let's see, back to our questions. Show one more time how to delete and manage waypoints. All right, so let me get back into it. Pull up so how to delete a waypoint. This is going to be how to delete a waypoint, how to delete a track, a line, or an area shape. Process is the same. Click on it. It's going to pull up this menu here. Along the bottom, there's a button that says delete. Click that. So that's going to delete that. Anything you delete is gone. However, if you accidentally delete something, we can restore it for you. Sometimes somebody will accidentally delete a track or delete a bunch of waypoints. We can restore those. You have to email us or give us a call. Again, emails help@onxmaps.com. We can restore it for you on the back end. It's not something you can do on your side, but in the odd chance that something happens, you accidentally delete something or delete a bunch of things that you'd like back, shoot us an email. We can go in and restore those for you. Let me see here. Stop sharing one more time. Looks like that's all the questions that Eli passed along to me. I'm going to one more time enter that giveaway link there. Again, we're giving away some onX Hunt hats. I'll send an email to everybody tomorrow and get those shipped out to you. So you should have those depending where you live, maybe by the weekend or early next week. And then just a couple more things to wrap up here. I should have shared my map first. Anybody who doesn't have an onX Hunt membership, we do have a discount offer. So this is if you're basic or to trial right now and you haven't purchased yet, use the promo code app101. That's going to save you 30% off of your first year's membership. You can go to that website there or go to our website. You can't use a promo code through the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. It has to be used on our website. Save you that 30% on the first year there. If you have any trouble with that, again, give us a call, shoot us an email. We'll walk you through that. Other ways to learn more. Our tutorials on our website are fantastic. If you're like me, a person who kind of likes to read through some things sometimes and work through it on your own, kind of at your own speed, that's an excellent option. Our YouTube channel has a whole bunch of demos. Those are kind of more feature specific, where they go into kind of one feature at a time, a little bit more in depth. Again, I've plugged our customer support team. I used to be in customer support. Connor currently is. I'm biased, but I think they're second to none. We've got a whole team of folks that you can call and email. Phones 5 days a week, emails 6, 7 days a week. What are we at now?
I think we're at 7. We're rolling through the weekends on that.
Yep.
And then with email, if you write in, we're going to respond within 24 hours typically. So if you email us tonight, sometime tomorrow, we'll get you an answer and make sure we can get you the help that you need.
Yep. And then, of course, more onX Hunt Masterclasses. We've got some cool stuff coming up next week. We're doing a shed hunting course with Eric Chesser from Hush, Stephen Drake, and Ben Shed Crazy Dedimonte. You might know him just as Shed Crazy. So that'll be a week from today. We are also going to start kind of a new program this year that we're calling Deep Dives. So for folks that are like, man, all the stuff we talked about in this class is basic, it's stuff I know. We're going to be doing kind of one aspect of the app at a time. We're going to talk about it for 20 minutes to a half hour. So we're going to start with underutilized layers. We're going to do different parts of the app and just really go deep on one thing. And then we have a whole series of application classes coming up with the folks from Hunt and Fool, who are experts in all of the different state draws for elk, mule deer, antelope, etc. As well as, we'll have some turkey classes coming out this spring and kind of as we roll through the season. So check out our other master classes. You can get signed up for them. If you can't attend them, you can still sign up and we'll email you the recording, just like we're doing with this recording tonight. You'll all get that email tomorrow. So sign up, even if you can't attend, you just get that email and you can watch the YouTube video afterwards. Then we already did questions and answers. And with that, I think that's it for the night.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Thanks again for joining us, everybody, and we hope to see you on a future class.